De Niro and gangster films. Those go together like peanut butter and jelly. You get those two ingredients. Hey, could it be the most cliched or rather simple thing? Yes, but hey, there's something about having De Niro in those movies that just works. I don't know how he can play gangster films no matter what. And as much as people could say that could he expand his horizon, sure, but you cannot deny this man's got a gift for that said genre of films, and you know what? It has done him well for many years, so I'm not gonna brag, and I can't even say I'm better than him because I will never be close to what that man has done with regards to his career. Needless to say, what do I know? But sometimes, even in our own genres that we're so confined to, or at the very least we're used to, there's always bound to be a slip up, screw up, and as much as De Niro has made his share of mistakes with his films, yeah, even it'll start to slip into the genres that he is usually really good for, especially this one.
Ooh, Lord, ain't my trouble so hard.
The Alto Nights is directed by Barry Levinson and written by Nicholas Pileggi. The film stars Robert De Niro, Debra Messing, Cosmo Jarvis, Katherine Narducci, and Michael Rispoli. According to IMDb's plot synopsis, two of New York City's most notorious organized crime bosses vie for control of the city's streets. Once best friends, petty jealousies, and a series of betrayals set them on a deadly collision course. Robert De Niro is not only one of the greatest living actors of his generation, but of all time. This man has a career spanning now 50 years of film history, and he has been a part of that due to his incredible talented gifts as an actor. Accumulated accolades, whether it be BAFTAs, Emmys, Oscars, whatever the case may be, this man is a powerhouse, and this man always delivers in the films that he has starred in, whether it be The Godfather Part 2, Deer Hunter, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Casino. These films and more established De Niro's career. Without these movies, or without how he presents himself in those said films, I don't know where this man would be. It would shock most people to think of what if Robert De Niro wasn't where he's at. And of course, in the 2000s and even 2010s and a little bit of the 2020s, he's had a few slip ups here and there. In the case of something like Dirty Grandpa or other comedy films, sure, Meet the Parents, people can excuse, but hey, it's gonna get to a point where movies like these come out and you're like, man, what are you doing? Just stick with Martin Scorsese. He'll help you out. He's helped you out for a very long time. Just stick with him or other people that can write you well, and you'll do just fine. Hey, good news. Along with Barry Levinson, the director of Good Morning Vietnam, and even though I could say that this movie is a little bit problematic in how it depicts autism, I still got kind of a soft spot for Raymond. Okay, Dustin Hoffman, Tom Cruise. This idea is sure enough to be a win. The idea I just said there, Robert De Niro, Barry Levinson, creating a movie, and it's a gangster film. Easy win. I don't see how this could go wrong in either way. Unfortunately, this ends up being just another mobster flick. Sadly, that tends to be the case with a lot of mobster films. Either you are going to hit the highs of how something like a Martin Scorsese can do things, or you're just a dime a dozen. And unfortunately, for as much as they have Robert De Niro in this movie, it does not even come close to what Martin Scorsese has done with the gangster genre as a whole. But before giving my set criticisms with this movie, here are the few positives that I do have. The performances are fine. Most of the cast, I think, do well and serviceable, but really, come on. Robert De Niro keeps the movie enjoyable as mob bosses Frank Costello and Vito Genovese. As always, De Niro, he's a professional. This man has been acting for so many years. And whenever he goes into movies like this, especially, like I say, mobster movies, it slips in. It's like wearing his favorite pair of slippers. Every time he gets into a gangster movie, I don't know what it is, this man just breezes on through. This man just goes into it and doesn't have to struggle or anything. This man just always brings no matter what the case may be. And in this film, He plays two gangsters that some people would say, man, they kind of look like each other. They could be twins, even though in real life they weren't. If you look at historical pictures, they weren't. And sit here and say that, well, I do think that they could have gotten somebody like, I don't know, Al Pacino, as much as they have appeared in movies together. But at the same time, I will give credit. De Niro does play them off differently to where it's able to sustain the entertainment value with him playing those dual roles to where it's not really a huge problem, but it is something where I would be like, could have benefited with that, sure, but hey, it's De Niro, professional. I can't argue with that. The cinematography is slick. Cinematographer Dante Spintoni captures the lavish and grounded style that showcases this rivalry, making it as bloody and serious as gangster films come. Listen, if you're gonna make something like this, you might as well put a little pizzazz, or at the very least, make it as interesting as you can with how it can look. It could be as stereotypical as it can be, but can you at least deliver a little pizzazz? And this movie does that. It does in a way where it suits itself as being that said gangster film that it is, as well as just being, hey, look, this is a serious film. It's a drama. At the very least, it delivers on the look appeal of that. The music is decent. Composer David Fleming sticks to the moody tone of the movie. Also, the licensed music fits well into it as a whole, because of course, yes, it goes into different periods, and licensed music that is used of that period to be put into here fits well into it. And David Fleming, he does the best with creating the atmosphere around the movie to where at least sustaining your belief in what is happening. The production is good for a budget of $45 to $50 million, which is pretty low because most of the time a lot of gangster movies kind of tend to be a little bit higher than this, but it looks impressive. From the sets, costumes, and props, it all looks amazing. There is a lot of attention to detail with regards to the clothing as well as the sets, making sure that everything fits right and really captures the tone, but also what the period of 1950s is. But even prior decades that this movie also does showcase, I do like the fact that it does present it in a way where it doesn't feel like it has to be all super duper flashy. It's just, hey, this is what they wore. That's what it is. Aside from that, this feels like a big cliche gangster movie but with no personality. And that's the unfortunate part, especially when you have two talented people, whether it be in front of or behind the camera. It's not enough to say that does this movie stand out amongst the other mob movies. Fortunately not. Here are now my negatives with it. The story is generic, though there are a few moments that I can say there was a little glimmer. There was something where I was like, okay, I'm a little bit intrigued, and I liked the premise of this movie, like the idea of what this movie is trying to tackle about these two mob bosses that have been friends since childhood and now are rivals. It just follows kind of a stereotypical mob movie that you kind of have expected, especially seeing as that somebody like Martin Scorsese has kind of perfected this storytelling. Feeling soulless from beginning to end. There's nothing about it that really screams like there is of intrigue or excitement. It just kind of feels like, all right, you're watching De Niro work and he's amazing, but like as much as there is an interesting story here, it just kind of is executed in a way where it's, all right, this is what happened. Okay, like you should be feeling like, oh man, like this rivalry really got to two friends. No, it was just bunch of guys going after each other because one put him in position of power, the other one wouldn't give it to him. So that sort of thing. But it's like it's not presented in a way where it is as meaningful or as engaging as it could be. It's just kind of going through the motions. The direction is formulaic. Director Barry Levinson handles this like a knockoff Martin Scorsese film. And it just comes off as a pale imitation of what a gangster movie is. And look, I'm not trying to be rude to Barry Levinson. This man has had a career for many years, so I can't tell him that he is a terrible director because he has had those accolades, the same as De Niro. But I gotta be honest, this movie does really feel like it's trying to be like Martin Scorsese. That I think is the biggest problem, is that it tries so hard to be like his style, his tone, his vibe, that it just kind of feels, it doesn't really feel like Barry Levinson feels like his own. He's trying to interpretate or try to be another director when he should have been just being himself, just another rehash of old gangster films and Martin Scorsese gangster movies. It's just lost itself. The pacing runtime is exhausting. Scenes feel too drawn out and it just keeps going. There are scenes where I feel like they could have cut off and stopped, but they just drag this out as long as they can. With a runtime of 2 hours and 3 minutes, it should have been probably like an hour and 40 minutes. I don't see how this movie was meant to be 2 hours, just trying to build this up to the ending. And it's like by the end of it, you're like, oh, okay. Like, you shouldn't feel like that. Especially, like I said, with a gangster movie. You want to feel what most movies like that, or even, like I said, and I keep on repeating this, Martin Scorsese would do it. Leave you with a sense of, oh, wow, or, oh, that's interesting. In this, you're just like, okay, well, that happened. All right. Like, no, you shouldn't be feeling like that, but this movie does. And that's the disappointing part is when you have a runtime and pacing that's really slow, it just kind of feels like, man, it's got no gas in this. There's no excitement. And I get it. Zach, it's a gangster movie. You're talking about violence and you're sensationalizing it. People, when you're trying to showcase how the mob works, you gotta make it interesting, either through your writing or how you portray the gangsters in the movie, whether it be through violent methods. And if you're not gonna do that, you got no gas. You're kind of just pushing this thing up the hill. And it just gets to a point of like, man, just do something. Just get me to be interested at the very least. The writing is bland. Writer Nicholas Pileggi doesn't bring anything to it and just comes off as a bunch of cliches as possible. That's the unfortunate part, is that when you're in this kind of territory, you gotta always hit the beats, but it's so on the nose. Like, if you're gonna do it, at least make it hit in a way where it's like it sticks that landing. This just kind of feels like a whimper going through the motions, and sometimes even the dialogue feels like it's stock dialogue that you've heard a dozen times. Not feeling as solid at all. It just all feels loose, and it just doesn't feel as if it is as concrete as it is. You had a bunch of, like I said, stock dialogue. Just throw it in here. Hey, other gangster movies said these things, put it in there as well. It's best hits of gangster movies. The characters are stereotypes. Besides Costello and Genovese, none of these characters are really that interesting. None of them are all that compelling. They're all just bland stereotypes that you've seen a dozen times. They are just gangster stereotypes you've seen done in other movies and done better in other movies than this. The editing is messy. Most of the scenes feel either chopped up or linger on too much, feeling indecisive of what it's truly wanting to be. For this film to be as gangster up as possible, it surprises me on how much the editing for this movie feels so inconsistent and so sloppy that it's almost kind of embarrassing. It's almost as if they are trying to rush some parts of this movie and they are trying so hard to slow down in some parts of this movie. And it does not help that the editing feels super flashy. That's the best way I can describe the editing in this movie. It's flashy. It's just there as being stylistic rather than actually meaningful. Honestly, kind of sad to see a movie like this, for as much potential as it is, for the editing to just royally screw this film up. Even with De Niro, bless his heart, he gave it his all. It's not enough to keep the movie as investing as it should have been. And it really feels like a knockoff Martin Scorsese without any personality. There's nothing about this movie that screams what Barry Levinson wants to be. It just screams, hey, these movies did this, and hey, I want to be like what Marty did with De Niro. And there's not really all much to it. It's just another one of those gangster movies that just comes out and, hey, has a good performance, but in the end, so what? Just leaving this as boring as it is. And that's the sad part. When you have a gangster movie that's just boring, what does that say about the idea of what this movie could have been? Like, it just kind of leaves you being like, this could have been great, but unfortunately it's just boring. And that's what you don't want to feel. And I give so much credit to De Niro because he is carrying this entire movie. But by the end of it, as much as I respect him and love him, and hey, this genre will always be close to him no matter what, it's still not enough for me. I'm going to give the Alto Knights a 4 out of 10. I just don't think this movie really hits the notes of what we come to expect for a mob gangster movie. It just kind of feels like it wants to hit all the classic notes without feeling as engaging or as impactful of a movie that it could be. And it just kind of feels like a movie you kind of come across while you're surfing through a streaming service. It looks amazing. I'll give it that. It looks incredible. Like I said, the production, the cinematography, it all looks amazing. I'm just saying though, the quality of this just really screams that this could have been on a streaming service. And that's the part that really hurts me, because for as much as I respect a movie like this for being 45 to $50 million, at the same time, when the quality is just meh, it's like, wow, that says something. That's not good to hear that, especially if you have De Niro in, like I said, and I keep on repeating this, a gangster movie. It's not good. And that is it of the March movies. So I will be moving on to the April movies, starting with the Minecraft movie next week. So yes, look forward to that review and other reviews coming soon.